or record. Thank you. All right, we should be rolling. Welcome everybody. Let's get this thing rolling. As usual, do an intro, give folks time to join in, a brief explanation on what we are here for. This is the virtual brown bag. We're recording all these meetings since we encourage people to be sharing things. Just make sure that you're not sharing something that's going to cause you any kind of trouble, because we're recording these and make it available for folks to catch up later, or for ourselves to review what we've gone over. The virtual brown bag is a place where we get together and we share tips and tricks. We share experiences, frustrations, difficulties, things that many times we learn the hard way. And then, it's a nice thing to actually, maybe pay forward and help other people out as well, because, your pain today could be something that's going to help out somebody later, and vice versa, right? It's this good vicious cycle, I guess. We do this every Thursday from 12 to 1 Central Time here on Skype. Everybody and anybody willing to either learn or share or doing both is more than welcome to join in. So, have your friends come join us as well. We have been all over the map. This is a summary or a partial list of topics we've covered. So just to give you an idea that we're really all over the place. It's anything that's, appeals to you, that you've gone over maybe recently, or that you've learned from experience. If you like sharing it, just do it by all means. We have a virtualbrownbag.com website where you can always find the link to this meeting, as well as the link to the videos from the previous meetings. If you just scroll down the page, you're going to find that. And other than that, let's roll. Since I have the screen share, I will just quickly go through some books that I've recently finished and I'd like to share. And then, as usual, just opening up to whoever would like to share next. So about a month or so ago, George had referred folks to this book, Badass Making Users Awesome, as one of those books that it's not like developer oriented, but it's like a must read, right? If you are building software, if you're providing any kind of service or product to other people, you should read this book. Last night, I finally finished reading it. I love it. I took like lots of notes for things that is like, yeah, I need to take this, I need to do this, I need to do this other thing. It really rings with me. Lots of goodies there. I like the style, the way it's like a humorous way of explaining some very important concepts. It's a light read, very easy to go through the book. So certainly recommend it. So George, thanks for recommending that on one of the groups that we participate. That was great. Several years ago, like maybe 16 years ago, I think, the first I read The Goal. I love that book. I actually listened to the audiobook. It's very cool because it's a novel type of content, and on the audiobook they have different people playing the different characters, which makes it for an interesting listening. I've since listened to it again like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It's always been one of my favorite books as well. And while that one is more specific, not necessarily to like the software industry, right? They talk about a factory and a plant that somebody has to manage and improve workflows and things like that. Just recently, I came to learn about this Phoenix Project book, and then as I start reading it, I'm like, oh, this sounds like The Goal, but for the software industry. And sure enough, reading more into it, the authors are heavily influenced by The Goal, right? So the same style, it's a novel with different characters talking about, the software industry. On the Phoenix Project, more from the side of a VP of operations, organizing technology and business, making them play well together. So I've read that one like 2 months ago. From that one, I jumped over to the Devops Handbook, same authors, a little more technical, not novel-based, also pretty good. And then this morning, I finished reading The Unicorn Project, which is a novel similar to the Phoenix Project, except that, and it's not like a sequel or a prequel. It's like it runs along the same timeline. it covers like the same fictitious company or fictional company, but covering more of like the engineers side of things and QA and the developers. So very interesting read. I mean, they all go together really nicely. I'm very thankful for the people who refer these books to me, and I will definitely be recommending to developers to read them. Why we're not going to be learning about, oh, what is the syntax for the programming language that I'm using here? It's more like, let's take a step back and think more about why are we doing these things? And I've really enjoyed the Unicorn Project even more than the Phoenix Project, but the three of them are pretty good. So that's what I wanted to share today. Hey, George, it looks like you were talking, but you were muted, man.
You're right, I was. No, so let's talk about badass. Like, what are some of the things that you felt were like really insightful in there? What are some things you really liked?
Oh man, there were so many things. I kept like snapping, photos of some pages to save some of the things that they are doing there. I mean, I like the idea of like incrementally building the skills and knowledge of users of whatever thing you are building. That really rings through with me. And for example, I can associate that with like working with developers who are not yet into like testing practices, for instance, right? Some people have this idea that, oh yeah, you just tell people you have to do TDD. That's the way to do it. If you're not doing TDD, you're wrong. Well, you don't really learn that way, right? You really have to learn the mechanics. What is a test runner? What is a testing framework? What are the assertions? And then from that, what is an integration test, a unit test? And then, okay, does it matter if we write the test before or after the fact? Well, yeah, it does. And when we do that, what happens? Where do we find difficulties? And then we go into the real world and we try to write tests against legacy code, and then we give up because it's so hard to write tests for it, and we don't take the time to learn the techniques to actually write tests for legacy code. So it's very incremental, and a lot of people drop those things, right? Mm-hmm. So that's something that's I really appreciate it. I also I do a lot of work with my motorcycle track riding efforts, where I build a community around that, and like in that community, usually when you go to the track and you ride with an organization, you have normally 3 levels, right? You have novice, you have intermediate, and you have advanced. And really, to me, there's way more than that. But when you go to most of these, they even call riding schools, they don't give you a path as to, really, this is where you should go, this is where you are, this is how you make progress in between those steps. So thinking through all those, I really enjoyed those things quite a bit. And the way that they talk about, of course, the cognitive friction for learning things, and how much we spend brain power on some things that are not important, and the users getting pretty tired, the willpower removed from the user because they've had to make so many decisions to get things done through the application, the software, that they're I'm giving this up. Those things important. The other thing I really liked was this idea of thinking about the context as opposed to the tool, right? And the sample that they give a lot is with photography, right? Oh yeah, you're selling this badass camera, and then the user, in order to make these amazing photos, they have to go through the manual first, but the manual is teaching things that's well, I just got the camera out of the box. How can I make how can I get started having some amazing photos with whatever default settings? Right?
So
I learn incrementally.
Hold on, I want to take a step back because I don't think you actually said this. Where the central context and the theme of the book is it is essentially about product design, and
yes,
that might be turn off developers, but no, we do product. You end up doing product design all the time. I don't know, I have never in 16 years in the industry and more in personal stuff been on project and not ended up doing a significant amount of product design. And the way that she puts it is like that what you want to achieve out of your product is to empower your users to feel like they're really badasses, not just at knowing your software, but that the software empowers them to do really badass things, and then that the software has depth, and the more you learn it, like that it scales well with their learning, that they're learning more, that they can do more and more badass things. So like a good example is Photoshop. I think she gives photography as an example a lot throughout, but like Photoshop is a good thing. Like, okay, right away you get it. You could do some pretty cool stuff right out of the box, and then the idea is, all right, now that way, they're telling all their friends about it. Now we blend into marketing and sales, and like how you're just generating all these network effects from that. All right, sorry, I just wanted to like give that context because
thank you. Yeah, I completely thank you. Yeah. You did great. Thanks for doing that. I actually, and that's like an example that I've been bringing up when I talk about the book with folks, like my usage of Evernote, for example, right? Mm-hmm. People see me as a very well organized person. I always find my stuff. I have a nice, quick way to find whatever I'm looking for. And I'm not talking about the tool. They see me doing it, and they're like, "Oh, that's pretty awesome! How organized you are! How are you doing it? Oh, that tool that you're, bringing up. What is it?" And then I say, "Oh, it's a tool called Evernote, but you can really do it with whatever tool you want. It's not about the tool. It's about your workflow, right? Your system, and then finding the tools and adjusting the tools to what you do. And then it so happens that this tool that I use allows me to do that, right? From like, okay, when I'm a beginner, this is the bare minimum that I need to do. It's easy to do it. As I become more advanced, I learn how to bend the tool to what I need, while the tool is empowering me to be awesome, right? And so that's, I mean, really, 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 I love this book. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to be reading it again, like in a couple of months, just to review some of the concepts there.
It is very good. I still think I haven't like read like the last few chapters. I just kind of been sitting it there. Yeah. It's one of those things like I walk away from it and I forget to read it, and then I just keep forgetting.
I did it, cover to cover, because I'm really like getting a lot of it. Like I said, I'm like, capturing some of the pages and taking notes, because there are things that I do that I'm like, I should totally be doing this. I should totally be using that, as well as like some of the things that she describes there. And then I look at like tools that I use and I think, man, I don't know if they've ever read such a book, but that's such a great execution of the things that she covers on the book.
Right. Or terrible execution.
Or terrible executions.
Usually terrible.
Yeah, I always bring up like several years ago when I was looking into like computer software to do music productions, right? And then I tried like 6 or 7 different software that a friend of mine who worked at a music studio, hooked me up with. He said, well, we have all these tools, check out which ones you like. Out of pretty much all of those, all I wanted to do was to plug my guitar into some sort of audio interface. I look for like this big red button that when I click on it, it starts recording. That was like my point of entry. If I can do that within like 10 minutes, out of all those tools, in none of it, I was able to do that. Now, bear in mind, I'm both a musician and a software developer, and I couldn't figure it out in the first, like, say, 10 minutes.
Right.
So it's like maybe they are tailoring those tools to like sound engineers who think from a different standpoint. I can totally buy that, because if they're modeling after what sound engineers actually do it at the studio with an analog gear and stuff, maybe. For a home user like myself, I'm like, no, dude, I cannot use it.
Yeah. No, there's a lot, like, I mean, I'll talk about Emacs. I'll say, like, the reason I think why Emacs is having a resurgence in popularity is because I mean it totally nails half of that equation where like you will keep learning forever and you will feel like a badass and you just see no bottom to the amount of stuff to learn and it really how your productivity really scales. But to get to the point where you can do those first few badass things is a really long while. And I think why it's having a resurgence in productivity is because Spacemax came around, and I don't think they were thinking about it, but that is exactly what Spacemax does. It comes in basically pre-configured with all these plugins that happen to fill that gap very nicely by like having a really, really nice and badass menu system that lets you really easily. I mean, I've been using it for 3-4 years. I'm still discovering new things just from the menu system, not even from like going deeper. Just being like, if I hit AR, wait, what are the things in there? All right, maybe like I have a few minutes now. Maybe I'll actually read what everything in the menu says and like try to figure it out. Oh, that is super useful. Like, right. So I think I think it's actually an interesting example of how to shim things like that into a product that already exists that does not have those properties.
True.
Yeah. By the way, I love Emacs's like menu system. Never talked about that before. It's really slick how they do it with Helm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's interesting. So like, one thing I actually have a couple notes about books that I wanted to mention. One of which there was a post that I just think people would like to link to, and I'll put it in the Slack.
Okay.
It's name a non-programming book that will make you a better programmer.
Right.
Super cool. It wasn't even me. I was looking at the wrong place. It's Dev 2, but super cool post. Lots of good recommendations and explanations. Strunk's elements of style was on there, which is like that Forster book about like here's how you write.
I have that book here. I was looking at it like 2 days ago. No,
the one that I really just like I read, I was like, oh man, that guy has a heck of an idea. I assume just both from the name and from the suggestions, some Serbian person. But it's recommended The Good Soldier Svelchik, which
I don't know that.
Yeah, a lot of it's a very famous book that almost no Americans know. You in a lot of ways it can be considered the Catch-22 of World War One. So it's kind of that same tone where it's all about comedy and despair and set in war, but it's all about, the way this guy puts it is, it's all about how to survive in a system where the management is completely dumb, and which at the very least is gonna be a fun read, just from with a software development point of view. But it is actually it's the Balkan book that people like, that represents that they people know. And like Joseph Heller, when he wrote Catch-22, was like this is 100% what influenced me. So
can you drop that link in the chat here?
Oh yeah, I'll drop
as
that
well if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's some really good stuff in there. I think I added a couple. What did I add in there? Dream Machine was one that I think is so useful. That's a book about. It starts by talking about J.R. Licklider and how he basically created he basically created the community that went on to become ARPA, and then he led ARPA, and then how that transitioned into the personal computing revolution and Xerox, and like all these really, really important foundational things that are really important to our industry. And it's and really understanding like the visionaries that were part of that, beyond the couple of names we know, right? Going down a level, It's really good. And then I would almost pair that with Idea Factory, which is about Bell Labs and how they started out as well, which is so fascinating and deep, and the amount of stuff that they invented is insane. Like it's but like if you really like if you just think about like telephone poles and the fact that you can stick a dead tree into the ground and it's standing and doesn't rot and stuff like that they figured that out because like Bell Labs was going around the country running experiments for like that had like a time span of 20 years where they would take different types of trees, different types of treatments, bury them in a swamp and like dig them up after 20 years and like take measurements on them. And that's how they figured out how to make telephone poles. Like things like that, like which drive our infrastructure. Really interesting. The other one I put on there, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We're now at this weird point in time where most programmers haven't read it. Which is just
I haven't.
Man, you should. You're just going to be missing like so many of the references.
I know because that book like comes up so often, and it's one of those that's like I've never read it.
It's really good.
So tell me about it. Why is it good?
So, I mean, I don't know if you know, Douglas Adams was actually a programmer, a computer scientist. He was also, active at that point in time of the personal computing revolution, where like in the 70s and 80s, where pretty much if you were involved in that at all, like you were the sort of guy that the sort of person that knew how to program stuff top to bottom and build your own hardware, and holy crap, anyone from there is better than anyone now. And it's not really true, but sort of like just brilliant person. So with and he just really lays it out there with like a sense of humor. It's extremely absurdist. But I mean, it also, I would say, is the archetype for pretty much all sci-fi that doesn't take itself too seriously.
Okay.
Like, which is a very large portion of sci-fi.
Gotcha.
But of course, because that was his approach to it, that really opens up the horizons of like what sort of stuff he can talk about, what sort of stuff he can imagine, because he's not trying to like really go into the depths and explain technical stuff, but maybe he comes up with a funny explanation. And there's just things in there that are really off the wall, fascinating as concepts that open up into things, right? And yeah. I think just culturally, if we are to have a programmer culture, I mean, that's what it's in the past been very central to it, is that book, that tradition. I would say even more so than like Monty Python or any of that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Check it out.
And then the other thing about books that I want to talk about. So there was a article published somewhat recently called where's my notes? Time to Stop Recommending Code Complete. So let me put that article in here too. And he actually makes a pretty good argument.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not Code Complete, Clean Code. Time to Stop Recommending Clean Code. Yeah, it's not, and it's. Yeah, the argument was not what I thought it was going to be when I first started reading. I was like geared up against it, but he makes the point that like in the book, like he's talking about all these premises, and most of them still hold up, and most of the ideas still hold up, but all the code examples he shows are horrible code examples. Like he's just showing stuff, and he's like talking about stuff, and I'm like this doesn't demonstrate the like good clean code at all. It fails on most of the points that you're talking about. And so he's like a little worried about leading people down the wrong path, which I think is a very valid point. I would agree to that, with the caveat that My daughter's walking in. That with the caveat that a lot of people have found clean code really interesting and useful over the years, and I hesitate recommending people not read something that other people have found really useful and useful without something to replace it. And I don't really know exactly what fits that hole. But at the same time, Clean Code was never my book. It's not one of the ones that I really came up with that much, or like most of my foundations programming stuff actually came from, if you remember, Carl Seguin on Code Better.
Yes.
Yeah, he had like an ebook called Foundations of Programming, and
Okay.
yeah, he wrote it in like the mid 2000s. That was kind of my book and my introduction to the same concepts, which I think did it really well and worked well for me. But it's out of date. He hasn't he had an effort to I think do a version 2 that he abandoned at some point. But
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting idea that maybe it's time to find something better that represents all these concepts better, that illustrates them better. It's a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely give this a read, because I know I've read the book, I guess when it first came out. When was that? 10, 12 years ago, something like that? Can't quite picture. It seems to be like that long ago. I remember at the time I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Well, right. At the time I enjoyed it, but I never revisited the book. So I don't know how well it aged for me. And it's funny that you mentioned, because maybe 2 weeks ago, I had a friend of mine actually saying, oh yeah, one of my goals for the next couple of weeks is to reread that book, that specific book. So I also want to ask him maybe sometime next week, did you do it? What did you think? Right?
Yeah.
And interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, part of the issue is that it's Java. Java is just so verbose and kind of and lacking in some tools, but still.
Yeah. So I wonder, like, okay, maybe the code didn't age well, but what about the concepts, the idea?
I think most of the concepts did. So one of the things this guy criticizes, remember one of Uncle Bob's big things in there is that code should read like a narrative, basically like a story. And this guy kind of criticizes that on the reasonable point that's kind of onerous, and like nobody really does that. And how do you really do that anyway, right? And I am very sympathetic to that.
Okay.
With the exception, but I also think that Uncle Bob was kind of wrong about that. I don't think it should read like a narrative. I think it should read like an outline.
Yes.
Which I think is
Okay.
a subtly different but important point, where it's like, where a narrative means like, okay, I'm going to open up this file and read it end to end, and then I get the important stuff in that. Whereas I'm saying like, no, it should be organized so the most important stuff to understanding for what you're going for is at the top, and then you can kind of drill down.
Agreed. Oh, did we lose George? Yeah, I think he may have dropped. Oh, now you're back. Or maybe not. It's on. It's checking. Still here? Okay, yeah. We got your message. I guess you can hear us, but we cannot hear you anymore. doesn't show like you're muted or anything. Okay. I see you moving now.
Okay, can you hear me though?
Yes. Your image is frozen. You have a funny face. But that's good stuff. Yeah, I definitely want to go through this. Okay, now looks like you're back.
Okay, cool. Can you hear me though?
Yep, can hear you, and yeah, video is back.
So that's actually an interesting thing. The local paper here was putting out a warning, and probably applies to y'all as well, that there's gonna be internet disruption as students come online, and like so massive amounts of people are going to be way more people are going to be using video calls all of a sudden. So everyone should be prepared for a lot worse network connectivity.
Yeah. So it's like the one thing that we're relying on to be able to stay in touch with people, right? And we're gonna lose that. Great.
Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. It certainly won't be everywhere, but it's. I know down here in New Orleans they're talking that it's going to happen over the next few weeks.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Cool. What else do we want to talk about? You got anything else?
Nothing that I had noted.
Okay. What can I talk about? I have so many. Well, I guess what's an interesting topic from my here?
Oy. That was on my end. Sorry. Let me mute.
Yeah. I don't want to do like more screen sharing if it's becoming an issue for that. I'm actually, but let's kind of talk about some of the some more general stuff. So I want to pose a question to you as someone who works at, well, both of y'all who work as improving, or anyone else who works at other companies, or just in general, other companies that works. What keeps you from offering internships as a company? Not internship, apprenticeships as a company.
So, I actually know a little bit about that. We were thinking about it before the pandemic hit, and that just kind of killed it.
Is the issue just figuring out how to do it remotely? Or?
No, I mean, it was more of just, as a consulting company, we were having enough issues placing our experienced folks. Oh. We didn't think we'd be able to place, people in apprenticeship type.
Did y'all see the consulting market slowing down like about a year ago? Before COVID, or did you only after COVID?
Not for us in Houston, but I don't know that we're necessarily typical, but no, we were doing really well. Okay. I think.
Yeah. No, I understand that. That's one of the things I've kind of often brought up, that it's very hard in consulting where you're putting someone to a client, you have to figure out how to bill them, and no client is asking for a junior resource, right?
That's been our main thing, right? It's just to justify that kind of investment. It has been very hard.
Yeah, they're looking for a junior resource with 3 to 5 years experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when I was with Software Architects, which was 20 years ago, we had a fairly good system for. We had some relationships with a couple of universities that we basically got their best grads, and we had a program. I used to joke that they'd send me out there as the camel's nose under the tent, and then they'd throw a couple of these kids out of college in there with me, and that actually I I enjoyed it, and it worked reasonably well. It's just it's hard in the to get that going in a consulting arrangement. It actually makes a lot more sense when I was in a corporate environment, but I had some resistance to it in a corporate environment.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you said, nobody wants somebody with no experience in software development. And I try to convince people, it's like, no, you don't understand. Take those smart kids and train them the way you want them to work.
Yeah.
That's way better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, except if you're a good trainer, which most people are not, because not many people are focusing on it.
Well, and that's something that's we were prior to COVID, we were looking at alternatives and models, trying to find a good model to make it work, because at Improving we do have good trainers, we do have the how do we grow people, we do have that. So we were looking at models that could make it viable or feasible from the client standpoint. But then of course when the pandemic hit, it's that's one thing that we're gonna need to put on a hold.
Yeah. I will mention, because I've since researching this question, I found this out, and I don't think it's commonly known at all. So registered apprenticeship is an actual government thing, Department of Labor regulated, where there's certain steps you take and there's certain perks you can get from it. I've spent a little time looking into it. It's harder to understand than it should be because government.
Big surprise there, right?
Yeah. But that is an interesting thing, and that is also one of the things. So now, I do look at places that offer apprenticeships and be like, that's not really an apprenticeship program. You're just calling something an apprenticeship. That's not what it is. It's just you're just giving people an internship for 3 months, and at $15 an hour. That's not the same thing.
Right.
Whereas the government registered apprenticeship, you have a path by which someone grows. There's a plan you have to put forward. You have to have a wage growth plan. It actually sounds like a pretty well put together, light touch bit of guidelines, and then you kind of get access to their registered apprenticeship network. But I think for companies that are interested in it and don't know exactly how to do it, it's pretty darn good darn good rails for them to use. So I don't know. I think some of it is just people need to know more about it, because there is interesting stuff you can do. In consulting, it's tough because that's not why a client is hiring you. Yeah.
It's a tough call. I mean, it's funny that like Tony mentioned, that people are looking for apprentices or whatever with 3 years of experience. I can say that George, I think you were the only one that I remember when we started working together. I remember you mentioned you had been coding for about 3 years, and you impressed me. It's in 3 years you are doing way better than people I've worked with that have been doing this for 20 years.
Well, I'd been coding for a lot longer. I'd been working professionally for 3 years.
Yeah. Yes.
That's a big difference, though. Yeah.
That is true. Yeah.
But I mean, so that's an interesting thing. I don't remember if I've said it on this call before, where the years experience thing, people complain about it a lot. I think years of experience is not an unreasonable qualification to ask. It's weird to get really detailed, any experience, 3 years of experience or 5 years of experience is kind of enough buckets to. But what I think is absurd is years experience in a technology. That makes no darn sense, right? Because there are very few technologies out there that are so hard to learn that you need to drop that, and then you need to put that qualifier in front of them. And I really, really think that is something that people just aren't thinking about. 5 years experience and has some knowledge of these technologies, sure. But 5 years of experience in C#, no. If you use Java or whatever, and you have 5 years of experience, I think you can move over just fine. If it's consulting, you have to do it a little on your own time, right?
Yeah, I'm always very reticent on the whole like years of experience, because it's like, okay, you've spent 5 years in C#, but you are doing year one for 5 years. That to me, it's worth nothing, because if you've been in 5 years in C#, writing C# code, like procedural code, right, where you have like this one class that has 100 methods with 200 lines of code in each method, doing 5 years of that, I'd rather have the kid that has been doing this for like a year, but is already like working through like solid principles and better like clean code and things like that. So
yeah,
it's hard to gauge.
Yeah. Do you have to run?
Oh, I do. Thanks for the reminder, man. Sorry, guys. I do have to drop off, but I'll catch up with the video later today.
Yeah.
You guys have fun.
Yeah. So kind of talking more along those lines. I don't know. I do think there's. I don't know. Working with like boot camp grads right now. I do think that there's like, even right now, most of them, especially the ones that are like really good at being organized and good at driving, are finding jobs. It takes a month or two longer than it would have them in a different environment, but they are. But like, those are people going into like fairly serious jobs, and like, man, they would have gone into an apprenticeship at a lower wage, like if there were like these learning opportunities and guaranteed for them, and that would have been a fantastic payoff for the company, maybe even as opposed to like hiring them, right? Because they would have been happy for that. So I think there is some level of missing out, but it is certainly hard to figure out like, okay, how are we going to train them? Who's going to train them? But people just need to look at those guardrails more, because they're not nothing, and they're not bad. So I'll point that out. I don't know, what else do we want to talk about? Tony, Seth, John, y'all got anything?
I'm just listening.
Okay. I guess, let's see, what else can I talk about? Oh, here's something I had written down. I started a little notepad for collecting fun solutions to FizzBuzz. I'll share my screen. Here, I'll just share this. So let's see. So I mean, I think everyone knows FizzBuzz. It's this whole problem that used to be an interview problem and is now so simple, so like well known and simple that it's not really a common interview problem anymore. But basically, print the numbers from 1 to wherever, and if it's divisible by 3, print fizz. If it's divisible by 5, plus buzz. If it's by both, print FizzBuzz. Otherwise, print the number. So I mean, first of all, just here, hands down, the best solution ever in Racket. This is code right here. So let me zoom in. I guess I can make it larger too. Yeah, here, I'll delete this. I'm gonna run it, and it doesn't run because, hold on, I was halfway through hacking some stuff. It's gonna run. There we go. So this is freaking fascinating. I love this so much. That this is code, and I think I've said before, like, this is a direction most people should be working on. But basically, this right here flips that and says, okay, this right here is a macro, and then it flips into a custom reader. So it reads this table, and basically this is a Karnow map, I think. It basically says when the first thing matches that, do this, and this the second one matches that, do this, and here you go, match it up, FizzBuzz, freaking beautiful. I've also talked about this one before, but if anyone's interested, I'll bring it up again. Here's a really cool article about using TypeScript types, the type system itself, to implement FizzBuzz. And it's, I mean, the good way to level up on TypeScript types is certainly, basically, like, it's going to compile as a compile. It's not running, like it compiles if it's a legitimate FizzBuzz sequence or not. It's crazy. It's really neat. All right. Let's see. This was a fun article. Implementing FizzBuzz in TensorFlow. So this guy basically trained to. So TensorFlow is a ML platform by Google, though I think it's actually open source too. You know, one of those things. And he trained TensorFlow to solve FizzBuzz. So, and he does, and he writes this. His article about it is written as an interview. So as if someone's interviewing him, and he's answering to FizzBuzz using TensorFlow, which is hilarious. So, yeah, so he trains it up, and he actually gets really close to nailing it with his initial like parameters. But I don't do TensorFlow, so I haven't really gotten I don't really get all of it, but I figure if you're going to get into it, like this is as good, and this is a perfectly fine way of accessing and getting started with it. It's at least fun, and that's a big part of starting anything. What else? Pure CSS. So this was a cool one, which I need to refresh myself on. So this person implemented CSS implemented FizzBuzz in CSS. Now, what you do need is you need those divs placed on the page. But once you have that, you can use CSS selectors to place everything in the to put the right content everywhere. And you can use the counter property to go ahead and generate 1, 2, 3, 4. You could actually do it a little bit simpler by using I don't remember this guy actually. Yeah, by using an ordered list, because an ordered list will, of course, can I close this? Well, whatever. This is fine. An ordered list outputs 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if it's one of those things that match, you remove the list style. So here we go. It's an even simpler implementation of FizzBuzz where you don't need to use the counter or anything like that. And then this other one I collected. If you've never seen the Rockstar Esoteric programming language, it's basically a programming language which is meant to sound like song lyrics. So, yeah, there you go. This is how it's implemented FizzBuzz is implemented in Rockstar. Midnight takes your heart and soul, where your heart is as high as your soul. Put your heart without your soul into your heart. So heart is a variable. Soul, I think, is a variable. I don't remember. So this is declaring basically a while loop. Give me back your heart. That's a variable access. This is desires, love, serve, lady killer. I think that's a variable declaration again. I think fire is ice, hate is water is I think a true false testing. But yeah, so that's another fun implementation of this that I've seen. If anyone sees cool implementations of FizzBuzz, I collect them, so let me know. One of these days, maybe I'll write up an article about it.
There's a good one I saw that doesn't use modulo at all, which is cool. It's like completely recursive. I forgot who wrote it. Maybe Corey did.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's interesting. I guess you could, because, yeah, you just, if you recurse, the recursion knows what's coming next. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Yeah, I guess what would you do? You would do without modulo. So like, let's say we're doing Python or something. Then I guess you would do def FizzBuzz, and then till, so we'll do a number that's till 3, and then another number till 5, right? And then you're just doing if till 3 equals 0 and till 5 equals 0, yield FizzBuzz, then if else if till 3, I guess I can just do this. So not that. If not till 3, yield fizz. I mean, it's something like this, right? Or was he doing something more clever?
I think he had a lot of, I remember this years ago, but he was incrementing things at the different branches. Something like that.
There are different branches.
I don't think I remember. I might have it saved. I just remember thinking, "Oh, this is cool," and
yeah.
At the time did not understand how it worked. It was I remember it being a lot of code actually.
Hold on. So let's see. So you need the number, right? Yield n, and then we're going to yield from FizzBuzz, and it'll be n plus 1, and then let's see, so it will be if till 3, you just need to make sure, so let's see, till 3 would need to be, if we're going to decrement them, but then if you're decrementing it, it shouldn't go below 0. It should go back up to 3. So I'll use a module here, but there's other ways to do it, right? So till 3 minus 1 modulo 3. I'm sure there's definitely other ways to do that. Wait. What is -1 modulo 3 though? Python. How does that work? Return -1. 3. Ah. Okay. So then that would mean that if it starts at 3, it's 0, it goes down to 2, it goes down to 1, then it goes down to 0, it goes down to -1, it's at 2 again. Okay, so that seems right. And till 5 minus 5%, 5, which, what am I missing here? Colon, and you do return list. Oh God, how do you take the first whatever? Now this is the sort of thing I have to search. Python take from generator. That's what it is. iSlice from itertools import iSlice. Set that to 4 by default. Set it to 2 by default. And then do iSlice FizzBuzz. Oh yeah. Set that to 0 by default. No, 1 by default. Comma 5, and that should return the first 5, maybe? Nope. What did I do? You indent. Oh. What did I do? What did I get wrong here? You indent does not match any indentation level? What? There is no indentation level to worry about. Oh, what am I missing? No, that's right, that's right. Oh. And definitely, it's been a minute since I've written Python. Does this work? FizzBuzz, isn't it? Well, that's one of the things I spelled it wrong. But there's definitely something there. Does it not yield from? Python yield from. Show me an example. Just get to the example part. Yield from. That should totally work. I don't know what I'm missing there. Oh well, first of all, it needs -1.
Dude, the fact that you're using modulo is breaking the.
No, I know, but like, I'm not using it for the same type of thing. I'm just using it for it's a cycle, right? Like, I could make that an array just of ones and put cycle in there, right? And just whenever you cycle, so it's like 3. It's like you could do something like. 3's equals 1 cycle 1 comma 1 comma 0, right? And then it's okay. And then every time you hit a 0 in that cycle, right? 5's equals cycle 1 comma 1 comma 1. I guess it's just 1 times 4 plus 0, something like that, right? What's that? I don't remember the Python. But something, and then I would just like cycle, and I would just grab the next one from there until I hit a 0, and then keep hitting that. I just don't know why this exact thing, why it's complaining about this, because this doesn't seem syntactically wrong to me. But for some reason, there's something about this line that's wrong.
Oh God, I have a staff meeting, but.
Yep, me too. I gotta go.
Okay.
I will submit it to SethZalewskiInterviews.com.
Yes, please.
I should write that out, because that actually is a good funding solution.
Yes. Then I can break my brain trying to understand it.
All right. I will talk to everyone later. This is fun.
Okay, bye.
Bye.